So the Democrats decided to issue a warning to Joe Biden. I know, they're issuing a warning. Biden, you better stop screwing around here. Biden, what's going on here? Well, okay, so what's happening with Joe Biden? Well, the old man still thinks he's got that dog in him still. The old man still thinks he's got that fight in him still, and it's not looking good. Believe you me, not good. U.S. Democrats have expressed frustration over former President Joe Biden's reemergence into the political spotlight. His presence is reportedly complicating efforts to regroup after the party's defeat in the 2024 presidential and congressional elections, according to the Hill sources. Biden made his first appearance in months on April 15th, delivering a speech sharply critical of U.S. President Joe Biden's U.S. President Donald Trump's White House. Sorry about that stutter. Biden claimed that Trump's extensive cuts to federal programs have inflicted breathtaking amount of damage, demeaned the Republican supporters, and claimed that America has never been this divided. Well, Joe, you helped contribute to that disaster, Joe. Many in the party reportedly believe the octogenarian's return is ill-timed and risks distracting from the Democrats' party's attempts to rebuild, hence force the hyping up of AOC. Former press secretary and First Lady Jill Biden, Michael LaRosa, argued that Biden's speech was a lovely gift for the White House, President Trump, and conservative media, especially in light of the new tariff policies when the administration is under heavy scrutiny. If they had advisors who had their hand on the pulse of the Democrat Party and national politics, they would have understood the intense level of anger or indifference to them that remains inside our party, and it isn't going away anytime soon. Strategists close to the Democrat leadership have expressed concern that it's an inopportune time for Biden to appear, especially as polling indicates that Americans are increasingly blaming Trump for his handling of the economy. Well, Trump, listen. Biden didn't do the economy any favors. All right, my audience can attest to that. Biden's recent remarks have also drawn criticism from conservatives who allege that the Democratic Party and the former president's policies were among the main factors contributing to divisions in American society. According to polling cited by The Hill earlier this year, only 39% of Americans approved of Biden's presidency from 2021 to 2025, while 57% rated his performance negatively. In some surveys, he was described as one of the least popular living U.S. presidents ever, period, ever. End of sentence. So that's Joe Biden, right? Now, the thing is, Joe Biden and the Democrats helped create an environment of ineffective Democrats. We know this all too well. And this is where, again, people are being hyped up into believing that you could change something. Joe Biden made it very clear, as did all the Democrats in the 2020 Democratic election cycle of the primaries, that they are going to pick who they want. And yet all this attempt by people like AOC or David Hogg, all what it is a distraction. Wake up to reality, folks.
I look forward to standing behind every single Democratic incumbent, from the most progressive to the most centrist and all points in between.
Hogg was also on the Sunday shows this morning and had this to say.
We cannot just be the party that is against Donald Trump. We have to be a party that doesn't have a 27% approval rating from our own base. And the way that we change that is making sure that we have some different characters.
All right, back with us again, Julian Castro, Susan Del Percio, and Matthew Dowd. Julian, I want to start with you. Does David Hogg have a point there? I mean, I cover a lot of foreign affairs, and it is always shocking to me when you go to these G20s or NATO meetings, how much older on average U.S. lawmakers are than a lot of the rest of the world. But do you think he's going at it the right way?
Look,
It's a correct way because, listen, the Congress is a glorified old folks' home. I mean, Dianne Feinstein was gone for like half of her time last year. You have a couple of congressmen and women, Democrat and Republican, also being found in nursing homes. Like, who's representing the people? We're being led by people who are forgetting where they're at, or either that not physically or mentally fit. Look, I know one day I'm going to be in my 80s and 90s. If I don't die from brain hemorrhage or a massive heart attack or just overall the neoliberal system knocking at my door, I'm going to reach that age. And one day I won't be as sharp as I used to be. I'll keep on keeping my mind sharp, but we all have a beginning, middle, and end. And these congressmen and women who are in their 80s, going on to their 90s, serving in Congress, this is not how a functioning government should operate. This is what happens when you have dynastic politicians ruling over us. It has to be called out.
I think that there's a place for primary Democrats, especially in safe Democratic districts that are no longer holding up the values of the Democratic Party or being active in a time when we need them to be. I don't know that that's defined just by age, though I would say it would be defined by Democrats that are betraying the basic values, Democrats that may still vote with the NRA, Democrats that don't support expanding access to health care for more Americans, Democrats that are not stepping up when they need to fight back against this Trump administration. So I've felt for years that there are too many Democrats that feel comfortable because they're in safe Democratic districts and don't get out there and fight back enough, unlike the Republicans that always fear a primary, and because of that, they're constantly fighting for their side. You see more laxity with regard to Democrats. So I understand why people are pushing back against David Hogg, because he's vice chair of the DNC, and the DNC traditionally upholds basically incumbency for Democrats. But this is a separate effort, a separate group that he's part of. And I do think that there's a role for Democratic primary challenges, especially if folks are not stepping up right now when we need them to step up against the guy who's acting like a tyrant in the White House.
Matt.
To be clear here, during the 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration, especially going into the 2024 election cycle, myself and everyone else in independent media, INN, Due Dissidents, Jimmy Dore, RBN, we all brought up the story one way or another in regards to how the Biden-Harris administration was preventing third parties and independents from being on the ballot and being on the debate stage. Okay? And either that, also using lawfare to prevent Trump from being on the ballot. A couple of states trying to remove Trump from the ballot, all happening under Biden's watch. If Trump had did that, man, people would be in the streets for days on end. There's a lot of things to be critical about Trump, but at least he didn't do that. Not defending him, just throwing it out there for the wise.
Matthew, what's your take on that? Do you think Democrats could use a little more fear in their life? Do you think it would help the party push forward, or do you think it's a risk?
Well, I don't think anybody does better with more fear in their life. I think people do better with much more hope in their life. And I think David has a point, as Julian said. I agree with Julian on this. I think that there's many Democrats right now that seem to think that doing business as usual and just getting through this moment and then getting to the midterms and everything will be fine. And as Senator Booker did with his 24-hour, 25-hour marathon speech that he gave on the floor of the Senate, there is ways to sort of stand up and try to stop what's going on by the president, and who's trying to instill some sort of autocracy in our country. I don't think it helps to sort of enunciate this as a young versus old. I think there's plenty of elderly people out there who've not had experience in politics who would be good elected officials. I think the problem is people that become part of the Washington system who think that we're all buddies and we'll just go on and Donald Trump's a clown, but okay, we'll move on from that, is not helpful in this moment when our Constitution, as our previous discussions have had, is at risk. So,
Hey, listen. When you've had previous Democrat and Republican administrations go after whistleblowers, journalists, people trying to defend free speech, it's a track record on both sides of the political aisle. And I hope that voters, Democrat voters and Republican voters, realize that both your parties, both politicians, and no matter who is president, Democrat or Republican, be it Reagan, Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump again, all those presidents have one thing in common, actually a lot of things in common: embracing of Wall Street and corporations, the embracing of the corporation of corporate media, the embracing of having a same agenda, and overall screwing voters over, and yes, stepping on the Constitution. I mean, each president, no matter what party they're with, you do realize that they've been slapping you in the face, right? So all this talk you hear from corporate media talking about the Constitution. Oh, I love talking about the Constitution, especially with the protection of the First Amendment. One can dream.
So, I'm all for hope. And if David's bringing hope that we can have a new generation of folks that includes both young and old that are willing to push back and do what they need to do in our country. And I think Democrats have to understand that they just can't keep doing business as usual is what seems to happen in Washington, D.C.
Susan, speaking of making noise and pushing back, yesterday there were another Saturday of protests across the country. But the issue with these protests is people are protesting a lot of different things. And as we've talked about, focus and messaging has been a problem. So how can Democrats make the most of this momentum? And do you think they're doing enough?
Well, I'm just going to tie the previous question into having a vice chair at the DNC trying to create a movement. You can't do that necessarily within the DNC or any party structure for that matter. You want to be out there leading a movement, creating a movement, raising $20 million, go have at it. But be out there doing it. You can't necessarily break out from within the confines of the DNC. It just doesn't make sense to do both.
And what that is shut up, follow orders, and let us pick who we want and who we think will best represent your values. Controversial statement here. The Republican primaries have been more Democratic than the Democratic primaries. At least the Republicans don't have super delegates. Not saying that they weren't trying to stop Trump during the 2024 Republican primary. You know, I mean, that was clear, but they didn't have a chance. I mean, Republican voters wanted Trump, and he won the Republican primary of 2024. It's very clear. End of discussion, end of debate. There is no debate. Simple as that.